I want to move back slightly because you make such profound points that are obvious to most precious metals investors. But and I know you've said it many times because I follow your work fairly closely. But I think there's three things that you say, and I want you to expand on it. One is currency and money, which I don't think we really need to talk about if anyone's followed your work, the difference. The other ones that really strike home is the amount of funding money that's out there compared to the 1970s bull market and the availability for the general population to get into this market. I think those are the two keys that if we don't talk about anything else, we want the general public that's unfamiliar with metals and money and currency to understand. Can you please expand on that?
Yeah, well, that is what Chapter 7 is about. It is the whole point of the book, and the other chapters leading up to it are so that you understand the current situation. When you get to the point where it's explained to you that in the bull market of the 70s, gold went up 25 times from its lowest intraday price to its highest intraday price. Silver went up 41 times from its lowest price to its highest price. And that was with a very, very small percentage of the planet participating to drive the price up. Now, there are about twice as many ounces of gold above ground, but in China under Mao and in the USSR, there were no investors, not one. There were no exchanges that you could buy gold on that would help to propel the price up. And it was illegal to own gold in the USSR or Maoist China. And most of the rest of the world, it was either illegal or there was some encumbrance, or the population was so poor that they were worried about what to eat tomorrow, how to get food tomorrow versus what to invest in. You remember this, all the commercials back in the 70s and 80s of starving children on TV in the Caribbean, Mexico, South America, Africa, Southeast Asia. It was all over the world, and it was true. There were children starving to death. And today, there are billionaires in all of those countries. And so the facts are that today there are 18 times more people that can buy precious metals than there was when gold hit its peak back in January of 1980. They have 55 times more currency. There are 56 times more millionaires. There are 200 times more billionaires. People don't know it, but there's countries in Africa that have like 6 or 8 billionaires in these countries. Same in South America, Southeast Asia. All these countries that were starving to death now have billionaires in them. There is 220 times more consumer credit available that people can buy gold and silver with. And the stock market, the global stock market capitalization is 49 times higher. And I believe the assets under management is, I think it was 39.6. I don't have that data right in front of me. It's not memorized yet, but it will be. But there's about twice as many ounces of gold available. Now, a lot of those things I just listed are the same people. A billionaire is the same guy that has some of those stocks that are 49 times greater stock market capitalization, and he's got bank accounts and so on. So not to double count anything, I take all of this data and distill it down, and I say there's no possible way of really coming out with a hard number here. So I'm just going to take a wild guess. There's probably about 50 times the amount of currency that can come chasing each ounce of gold, that the amount of ounces of gold and silver have doubled. There's 50 times more currency. Therefore, it's 25 times more currency per ounce that can come chasing gold and silver this time around. And gold went up 25 times and silver 41 times back in the 70s. Well, they had come off of years and years and years of price suppression by the fact that there was a face value on silver because it was our coinage, and the Bretton Woods system, which pegged gold at $45 per ounce of gold. This time around, we haven't had that price suppression, but we have had other price suppressions, and we've had this isn't in the book. This is in, I think it is my number 2 or 3 reasons. There's a video of the top 10 reasons I buy gold and silver. And in there, I show that there's this myth that in ancient Roman times, a man could buy a suit of clothes to clothe himself from head to toe, a toga, a belt, a nice pair of sandals. And it's always been that way. And that it's actually not true. It's varied in this price range. And in the Great Depression, an ounce of gold at $35 an ounce could buy you a very nice suit. But by the 1970s, at $35 an ounce, try and get a suit, shoes, and a belt in 1971, just before Nixon took us off of the Bretton Woods system, for $35, and you had to go to like some secondhand store to do that. So it's not the absolute truth, but there is some truth in that myth, in that it varies in this range. Sure. And right now, what we've had is all of these other financial assets. In ancient Roman times, there was one place to store your wealth, and that was gold and silver, the coinage that was in circulation. Now we've got bonds, and we've got stocks, and there's a multitude. We've got cryptocurrencies. There's a multitude of alternatives. And we have so much more stuff per person. It is just amazing, mind-boggling. The amount of stuff per person, the average person back in ancient Roman times was lucky if they had a good bed to sleep in and a pair of shoes to wear. Today, we've all got cell phones and refrigerators and multiple TVs, and it just goes on and on and on. Multiple cars. And so if some of those alternative financial assets come chasing gold and silver in a world where there's 25 times more currency per ounce of gold than there was in 1980 when it hit, it was actually $873 an ounce on, I can't remember which exchange that was, but that was an intraday high. And it just adds up to a mind-boggling potential for a future gold rush. And all it takes is the next big crisis to trigger the next great gold and silver rush. And I believe the Fed is like in the process of actively trying to trigger that right now. They may not know they're doing this, but they've raised rates at the fastest pace in history into all of the biggest bubbles in history. Chapter 5 was all, when you talked about bonds, that was the end of a list of all of the gigantic bubbles that exist and how big and how distorted the global economy is. And it's all the central bank's fault. When they create currency, wherever that currency flows to first goes into a bubble, but it's at the expense of the rest of the economy. That's the reason we didn't see inflation in retail prices, is energy was all being pulled over into the other assets. And so anyway, I want
to pause you there, Mike, for a second. Reading chapter 7, and you went into the billionaire, and I forget the number. I know it's more than 2,000. Is it around 2,700 billionaires? I forget.
Yeah, I believe it's 2,755 billionaires, and even that was low. After the book was printed, WealthX came out with their estimate. It was just over 3,000 billionaires back. Okay,
so here's my point.
A bunch that Forbes missed.
I want to make this point. I did it either in an article or a interview. I forget which, but my brain a little bit. I said, okay, how many real billionaires are there? So if we were back on the silver standard and you had a dollar, it hasn't changed, is about 0.77 troy ounces. A lot of people think that a dollar is a troy ounce because the Treasury doesn't know what a dollar is, because they print,
and they don't know what a troy ounce is, right?
So they punch out a 1 ounce coin and put $1 on it, which is wrong. The dollar's a weight, and it's not a full ounce. It's 77% of a full ounce. Point being this, there's roughly, and you get different numbers. You could take my number up or down. It's the idea that's correct. 4 billion ounces of silver. So how many dollars is that? We'll multiply it by 1.25. That's $5 billion weight of silver, which means you can only have 5 billionaires on the planet in terms of silver. That's it. Not 3,000. And I just thought that was fascinating, because I think I put on my Twitter feed, how many real billionaires are there? And I use that example. You could comment on that or not. We can move on. But it revivifies what we have both talked about, you more than me, is there's money and then there's everything else. And if you look at it in terms of money, there isn't a lot of it.
For your viewers, go to ggsr21.com and read and download chapter 3 of the book. And you'll see the difference between currency and money vividly portrayed as how many cans of Campbell's soup you can buy for a given quantity of currency. And before 1971.